Black Hatters, Sally Cat and the Black Cat. So this is my last video that I'm doing today for you guys. But I thought I would do it because I thought of it when I was doing one of the tags, one of the question tags, when we were talking about favorite flowers, and I talked about roses. So roses mean something very special to me. My grandfather, my dad's father, so my paternal grandfather, he had this love of gardening that he has instilled in me. May he rest in peace. He's no longer with us, but he passed away 2015. Yes, he passed away a few days after Thanksgiving. And he had a beautiful, and I mean, it's still there. My dad has it now because he still lives in my grandfather's house. A rose garden in his back garden in his city garden. It's very small. Hopefully I will get to film it at some point when I'm over visiting my dad. And I'll get to show you, especially now that they're blooming. The last time I was over was around not long after Easter, and the roses weren't really blooming yet. So the rose bushes are like over 50 years old. They have been blooming for, you know, just as long, like every year they come back, and they're so beautiful. There was a section of the stupid piece of hair. There was a section of the rose bushes that did not make it. We had a really bad winter storm one year. It was when my grandfather was still alive, and I remember he took it really hard when he lost one batch of them. They didn't revive back the next year. The storm had just done too much damage to them. But he literally had a green thumb in the family. And so every year, the first, flowers that would bloom, the first roses that would bloom, I would always get a bouquet. And, my grandfather would hand cut them for me, freshly cut roses. They're one of my favorite absolute things. The older I got, the more I appreciated it. And now that he's no longer here, it means even more to me, roses in general, especially roses from his garden. And I have actually told my dad that if he ever decides to move out and go someplace else, that we're going to have to figure out something, because we're going to have to try to figure out. I've never really had to replant something like that, but I'm going to look it up if the time ever comes on how to replant at least one of Grandpa's rose bushes at Dad's new location. Because like I said, they've been blooming for over 50 years, since even longer than that. My dad was 5 when they moved in that house, and Grandpa said that was the first thing that he planted when he moved in there. So my dad was born in 56. So 1961. Yeah, since 1961, 1962-ish, those flowers have been blooming. Those roses. So was it yesterday? Today's Monday. Yesterday was Sunday. Yes, it was yesterday. My dad had told me on Saturday that the roses were blooming and that he was going to pick some for me if I wanted some. And I just kind of looked at him. I was like, of course I want some. So yesterday when he picked me up from work, he had a beautiful bouquet for me. And I'm going to show you after I'm done talking here. But they're over on my Tranquility altar. I actually changed them out from my Yule flowers that were there forever, as you saw in my altar video. So now actually they're more fitting because it's roses and it's kind of the flower of the season for right now. So he had hand cut them for me, and if there was one flower that was just too short for the vase that I had, so I'm going to hang that one and dry it. I love to dry roses. What I do is I hang them upside down so that the blooms are at the bottom, and I hang them up so that the bloom of the rose is not touching anything so that the petals can drop and stay in the shape as it dries. And I hang it out of sunlight so that, it's not getting any sun, so the color isn't going to be discolored. Because usually roses, you can dry them perfectly and keep them that their color is pretty much the same. So I have that one because the last rose that I had dried from my grandfather's garden, unfortunately, it got smashed. It was on my altar, and jingle or something, some catastrophe had happened, and it just got smushed. But that's how I dry actual flowers with the stem on them. I actually have a couple of petals I pulled off from a few of my blooms as I was putting the bouquet together and just getting them ready, cutting off the thorns and cutting the ends off a bit at an angle. I work really well with flowers, with floral work. I feel like I should have been a florist. I think I just have an eye for things like that. Like I can kind of see what really goes together, like different types of flowers. I'm very fascinated with the language of flowers, what each flower represents, what it means, the color of the flower and what that means. So I'm always fascinated by that. And the bouquet that I had, I thought I did a pretty good job at what's the word? Redesigning the bouquet. So there was a couple petals that I had to pull off because they were wilting, they were falling off, and just to keep the flower alive. So I have them in a little dish, and I'm going to dry them out so that I can use them in witchy workings and spells or in incense, or if I decide to do some rose water or some rose oil or something. And Derry, you made a really good point, because I know you're going to be watching. You made a really good point at how that they're going to even be more magical because they already are filled with love and light because they're my grandfather's. And then my father handpicked them for me. So it's like 3 generations right there. But some things that you can do, because this is kind of like a tutorial too, on how to keep fresh cut flowers fresh and keep them blooming for a really long time. And a couple of these tips I actually got from my grandfather. So it's me immortalizing him, so to speak. One is to make sure that you have a clean vase, that there's nothing inside of it. I always clean it out right before use, even if it was cleaned the last time I put it away. I always re-clean it out, make sure that there's no dirt or debris inside the vase. And I fill it with water. And I try to leave it out to sit a little bit at room temperature. And usually when you buy those like bouquets from the store and they have those like fresh food flower packets in them, if you don't have the chance to use them, there's other things that you can do. You can make your water a sugar water if you use a teaspoon of sugar. And for me, I also use a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar. This is one of the very many things that my grandfather had taught me. And you put that in your water and stir it up. The sugar is basically like food for the flowers, and the apple cider vinegar is going to help keep the bacteria out of the water, because that's one of the worst things that you want for your fresh cut flowers is bacteria in your water. So when you're getting ready to put your flowers in the vase, also make sure that it is void of the thorns. I always cut them off, slice them up a bit. Always cut at least this much off of your stem and cut it at an angle. I use floral shears for mine. Don't try to pinch or a very sharp knife. Be very careful. Don't use a dull one or dull scissors, because you can pinch the stem and damage the water vessels inside of the stem of the flowers or roses. And when you put it in the vase, you want to make sure that anything that's going to fall below that water line or get close to that water line is void. So any leaves, any foliage is going to be removed. So most of my flowers, I had to remove some of the leaves because it was going to be too close to the water line. And I also kind of pruned them, so to speak. If you want to inspect each one of your flower blooms and make sure that any petals, at least for roses especially, any petals that are starting to wilt or you see are starting to get damaged, you just want to pull them off, and it's going to keep the bloom its best chances at survival and lasting long. Other things that you can do for food for your water, flower food, you can also use an aspirin. Do not use ibuprofen, and aspirin. I didn't happen to have any on hand because that's normally the first thing that my grandfather would tell me. But I do know that apple cider vinegar, a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar and a teaspoon of sugar, you know, a 1-to-1 ratio of that. And there is also one I didn't use either because I don't have it, and that's lemon juice and bleach, a 1-to-1 ratio of that and some sugar. So it's a 1-1-1 ratio of those. So equal parts of lemon juice, bleach, and sugar. I had lemon juice and I had the sugar, but I didn't have any bleach. So apple cider vinegar and sugar it was. And then you want to change your water every 3 to 4 days for your roses, and, you know, keeping an eye out on them. You know, if you have any more petals that are starting to droop, starting to get damaged, you know, you can pull them off and use them for your dried flowers or dried petals. And then you want to refreshen the water with your fresh food water or your fresh flower food in your water. So those are just some helpful tips. I think I got them all. Oh, and then once you have them in your vase, try to put them in an area of your house that is void of sunlight, or any heat, or any vents if you have, you know, like air conditioning or heat going or rolling or anything. Or like bright lights, anything that's giving off heat, like TVs, any electrical appliances that are going to give off like a significant amount of heat. You want to keep them away. Now I have them on my Tranquility altar, and the only thing there that gives a little bit of heat is my wax warmer, but I don't always turn that on. And I just moved it a little away from my vase, my bouquet, when I did have it turned on earlier. So those are just some helpful tips for fresh cut flowers, and I'll show you my bouquet in a minute. So this is me signing off. Much love to you all. Have a wonderful day or night. Blessed be. I'm out. So this is the beautiful bouquet that my father had handpicked for me and that I arranged. That's the word I was looking for earlier. I'm knocking stuff over, but I'm going to pick it up here a little bit to show you. Beautiful red ones. And then there's this beautiful orangish, coralish color. And I have 2 beautiful pink ones. There's that one. And then this really, really beautiful one. And there's 2 little buds that I'm hoping will bloom out. And then I have 2 yellow ones on the sides. And then more of the deep red magenta ones as well. So that's my little bouquet that my dad had picked for me from my grandfather's garden. Give you a little view here. And see, and also you always want to check your water level too. My water is looking pretty good because I did just start it yesterday. But if you start to see that it gets cloudy, you definitely want to change it. And you want to check to make sure that nothing is falling in the line. I do see a leaf that's close, but it's not in the water. The water is clear and clean, so we are good. So, hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.